This episode is sponsored by Horizon Capital, an M&A and micro private equity firm that acquires and grows SaaS companies. Horizon Capital only works with SaaS companies generating between $500K and $5 million in annual recurring revenue, where they help them unlock the true value of their business and scale to the next level. Whether you're ready to move on to your next startup or want to work with the right growth partner, Horizon's team will work with you to find the best structure possible. From M&A strategy to capital investments, SaaS is all they do. Simple as that. If you're a SaaS founder with less than $5 million in annual recurring revenue and are looking to sell your business, visit horizoncapital.com today and get a free valuation. If you'd like to sponsor the SaaS District podcast or recommend any guest that you think would be valuable to be on the show, visit horizoncapital.com/SaaS-podcast today. Thanks again, folks. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akhil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how our guest has built a bank for startups and then helps them with securing their seed round with top investors. Today, we have our guest, Immad Akhund, joining us. Immad is the co-founder and CEO of Mercury, a bank for startups engineered in Silicon Valley and aimed for tech companies to help them succeed. Immad and Mercury have raised over $25 million from investors like Andreessen Horowitz and Charles River Ventures. Prior to launching Mercury, he co-founded HeyZap, which is acquired for $45 million by Fyber, which we'll talk about today. So welcome, Immad. Super excited to have you on SaaS District Show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Akhil.
Yeah, so as we like to start every single interview podcast, we like to know what's your personal background, what are some of your past experiences and ventures, including launching and exiting your first startup, HeyZap, which we mentioned was acquired by Fyber for $45 million. If you could share that story.
Sure. I'm actually 4 startups deep. So HeyZap was my third startup, although it was the bulk of the time. So I started making startups in 2006. HeyZap I started at the end of 2008, and we went on till 2016 when we sold it. And HeyZap was basically a developer tool for mobile app developers to help them maximize how much money they made via ads. Since then, since 2016, I've also invested in about 150 companies, including Airtable, Rappi, Rippling, Momentous Space, a bunch of other really interesting companies, many of them SaaS, but a wide variety. And then I started Mercury in 2017, which is, kind of came from my own pains of using these kind of incumbent banks for my startups. I just, I can't personally stand using like bad products and then to be charged like, egregious fees and like get bad customer service on top of it. I just like found it like super frustrating. So yeah, that's why we started Mercury. And what we found with Mercury is like we're really serving like often quite early stage startups, and people often asking us for help. So yeah, over time we've expanded the envelope and we have like this new program called Mercury Raise to help companies also like raise money. So yeah, happy to dive into any of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. We were talking about this before the show. I mean, I know when I first had to open a company, because I registered a company in the US and then I tried to open a bank, actually like had to fly down to Denver, walk into a Wells Fargo, and, it cost me, I don't know, at least $1,000, right? And sure. Now, I found out Mercury is like, this is amazing. So I love it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big category for us is like people who, don't even live in the US, but start a US company. It's about half our customers are kind of that category. Nice. And it's crazy. Like you really had to fly to the US and sit in a bank branch for like 2 hours. And obviously, especially in a pandemic, no one wants to do that.
Exactly. So just before we get into Mercury, I want to talk a little bit more about HeyZap. Maybe you could just talk about, so obviously you've had some success, you've got investors. Maybe you could talk about initial costs of, launching that company. And then what would you say like drove the success of that startup to, that acquisition and eventual exit for you? Just for people who are thinking to maybe, plan for their exit in the SaaS companies.
Yeah. HeyZap was a long-winded story. We started in 2009 in like Flash games. I don't know if you remember Flash games, but that was a thing back in 2009. And even when we started, we had some plans to like monetize, but not like, to be honest, they weren't good plans. So we actually raised quite early on, like we did Y Combinator, and then we raised, back then it was a reasonable size round, like a 500K round from Union Square Ventures. And we kept going, and that didn't work. We switched over to we did a pivot over to, obviously mobile games blew up, so we pivoted over to that. And it wasn't really until our third pivot when we got into ad tech. So basically like 2013. So we started in 2009 and 2013. And that was when we started making money. I think like looking at all the cost it took us to get to that point is like, I guess it was around $5 million or something, but it's not really, this wasn't like the most efficient route to like build something that makes money. It was kind of like us like, pivoting and figuring things out and getting to something there. And then from that point onwards, we were profitable, pretty much. I think from 2013, we were profitable until we sold it in 2016.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So, obviously at Horizon Capital, we work with founders who are looking to exit their SaaS companies all the time. And I understand, it can be an emotional roller coaster when you're exiting a company. Obviously, it's not your first exit. You said it's your third time. But, what was that process for you? And has it changed your life after that exit, or was it the first one? And then after that, it's just like a game of repeat?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely changed my life. I mean, before that point, I've been doing startups from 2006 to 2016. So I was never... I raised money and I had like salary, but I wasn't getting, I was always paying myself like just enough to survive, right? That was my modus operandi. Like I was like, okay, how much do I pay myself so I don't run out of money, but I wasn't like living in any way like above my kind of means. And that was a very, significant exit for us. And, we managed to get a house in San Francisco. And obviously that's an expensive thing to do.
Sure.
So it was definitely significant in that sense. But in another sense, it doesn't, like money doesn't change your life, and it's better to just do something that you're passionate about. So, I'm doing a startup again, and it's not, to be honest, it's not that different from doing my previous startup. I mean, we raised more money and things like that, but that's just, when you're doing a startup, like whether you have personal money or not, doesn't like change the fact that like it's still a pain in the ass to do it. So I think like it was definitely positive. It's also bittersweet a little bit, right? Like it's like you work on something for a really long time. You do have to like put your heart and soul into like making a product work and making a startup work. And then like when you sell it, like, it's like kind of like giving up your baby. Exactly. And that part is hard. I think for us, the reason we chose to sell it is we were not, I was passionate about what we'd built and we worked hard towards it, but it wasn't an industry that was, I wasn't like, oh, I really want to spend the next 10 years of my life in ad tech. It was something we'd kind of stumbled into. And ad tech is like a difficult space. I think it's not that hard to make like a reasonable size company, and we sold it for 45 million. But it's very hard to make a huge company. So the impact you have is like somewhat limited. Whereas in like SaaS and like fintech, you can make like really big company have a much bigger impact. So that was kind of what kind of pushed us towards like taking an exit.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So, so you had some, obviously a life-changing event at that point. You've had like a good exit. Now you can kind of focus on a new market and maybe more towards your passion and something maybe you see longer, seeing yourself in this business for more than 10 years. Would you say that's accurate with Mercury?
Yeah, I see this as a long-term thing. I mean, if I sold it, I just have to do another company. So as long as this is going well, I might as well just keep doing this. And, and it's fun. Like banking is like the space where, a lot of other spaces in software, there's a lot of people who've already made a bunch of progress. Whereas I think in a lot of places in fintech, we're kind of in the first innings. Like we're maybe 3 years into kind of innovation when it comes to like depository banking. So I think there's a lot more that's going to happen, and we can be like a pivotal part of that.
Yeah, definitely. So Mercury, a bank intended for startups. Why did you decide? So you said that there's some opportunity there. You're still a lot of room. Why did you decide on fintech when building this bank? And why did you feel like startups was the space that was underserved? Or where did you see that?
I mean, I didn't like I didn't necessarily go like, oh, let's do a fintech company. And then I tried to come up with ideas in it. This is like very much a personal pain point of mine that I could see that as an entrepreneur, like banks really sucked. We could do a much better job. So, I kind of think about it as like, there's all of these kind of just like a better product you can build in banking. So in the same way that, Zoom is just a much better video conferencing and therefore wins, I think Mercury does that as well. Like we're just a much better kind of online banking experience and we'll win partly for that. B, there's a bunch of features we can build that are specific to the types of entrepreneurs we serve. So we have APIs, we have virtual cards and like those things kind of, actually we just launched Mercury Treasury this week, which lets you put your excess kind of cash into money market funds and treasury bills. So we can keep layering on these features that are like really help our vertical and like go beyond just like this is a bank account. And so I felt this pain point on like when you zoom out a little bit, banking is a freaking huge industry. I think in the US it's like $4 trillion or something like that. I mean, that's very abstract, but it's a really big industry. The top 500 banks are all worth more than $1 billion or something in the US.
Wow.
So from obviously like I want to do something big. I want it to be valued a lot. So picking an industry that's big, gives you a lot of options to grow into that. Why I wanted to serve startups is, it's a space I understand very well. It's important in fintech to have like good kind of user acquisition and think that through quite a bit, right? Like, CACs can be pretty high in fintech if you don't think it through. If you can pick a vertical like startups that there's already kind of strong communities, so entrepreneurs talk to each other a lot. Most of our growth has come from kind of entrepreneurs sharing Mercury with each other. There's also kind of channels like accelerators, seed funds, etc., that you can kind of channel, and then also startups that tend to make a reasonable amount of noise. So they're online, they're on the internet. And then lastly, I think building a product first company, you kind of want to have product first entrepreneurs, and that's like inherently like startups want. Startup entrepreneurs want like these modern products and use them. So all of those things have mostly played out. Our long-term aim is to serve like any digitally enabled business. So startups is one. We also serve e-commerce companies. Any US business can actually sign up to Mercury. So over time, we'll kind of increase that envelope.
Cool. And, when you compare it to all the banker, the space being, quite competitive, I would say, even though it's, more traditional, there's also, fintech. There's guys like, I think Stripe was it recently that also kind of announced their own banking system, or Square, I can't remember. So it's going to get more competitive. What would you say are some like main factors or value props that maybe can make you guys more competitive?
I wouldn't say it's that competitive. Sometimes things from the outside look a lot more competitive than like they actually are. Like if you were actually an entrepreneur and you were looking to like actually use a bank, most of the time we're competing against like these big incumbents. So whether it's SBB, which is like more startup focused, or Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, all of those people. That's really our main competition. And we think about Stripe launched something. It's called Stripe Treasury, but it's not a competitor. It's like a banking as a service layer. I'm sure there will be more competitors over time. But from my experience, as a startup, you always have like some boogeyman competitor. But at the end of the day, like they will do their thing, you will do your thing. And most of the time, I think I really wish I could remember who said this, but most startups die from like suicide, not homicide. It's very rare for you to go and like, be destroyed because someone like outcompeted you. If you stay focused and do your thing, like, you'll figure it out. And banking is just this huge space, so it's not something where I'm like, oh, we're nowhere near in running out of like customers that we could help.
Sure, yeah, that's a good quote. I like it. So, but then one side of it is you're competing with these big banks, traditional banks, and when I think of most people who open a bank, right now historically, it's been a more personalized experience, right? People walk in, they see a teller, they get that kind of experience with how to open the bank and getting a targeted service. And I think that builds a loyalty and retention with users over time because they have that teller they can work with, or account manager or whatnot. What's kind of your guys' strategy for, overcoming that challenge and making it more personal versus just like, like another software tool I can just pick from and kind of make it, transactional?
Yeah. I'd say there's two parts of that. Like number one, we've invested a lot in having a great customer service. And like if you talk to our customers, they'll like say, hey, Mercury responds quickly, and we respond with like real humans who know what they're doing and can actually solve your problem. So although you say like banks deliver a personalized experience, like it's not, people have a very negative experience most of the time when they interact with their bank. Like it's like you talk to someone, they can't solve your problem, they don't get it often, and then you get a run around and like, so it's not like a fun experience for people to interact with banks. So that's step one. Step two, I would say, I actually mostly, and this is like a personal mentality, but I think a lot of like, especially tech entrepreneurs would like feel this as well. Every time I have to interact with a bank, it's like a failure. Like their product has failed. They haven't been able to solve my problem. Like I want to click a button and things happen. Like I don't want to go call someone or talk to someone, or even worse, like going into a branch. Like I just can't imagine like me ever wanting to go somewhere to get something done. I can do it online. So there is like a certain set of people where they do prefer having that relationship and going and meeting someone in a bank branch. And like, those banks will still exist for that type of person. But I personally think that most people who do their business online are familiar with like, they use Slack, they use whatever, like they just want to get on with things and have them be kind of intuitive and easy and built into the product. And that's what we were building towards.
Right. So somebody like myself, right, we're like the newer generation of entrepreneurs, where your service will be aiming for like, digital banking experience. But how do you handle like the older generations? Maybe, obviously you're in Silicon Valley, but you go middle of, Arkansas, or I don't know, where's a state in the US, but we're the older generation that prefers that classic banking model. How do you allude to them and, make it interesting to them, or do you not even worry about them?
I mean, I'd like to serve them, but at the same time, like you be who you are, and there's a set of people. Like focus is important here, right? Like I don't think we can like go serve 100% of people in 100% of ways, and like go, we're not going to set up bank branches in Arkansas to like serve an entrepreneur there. So we are who we are, and there's a set of people that like that, and we'll get those. And I think that set of people is a growing set of people. Like the digital entrepreneurs are probably the future of entrepreneurship. I know I'm not for those other people who if they don't find it valuable, then that's their choice.
Okay, so you're not going around doing tour and like setting up shops and educating these folks on why they need to switch to digital. No? Okay. Okay, cool.
Maybe if we run out of digital entrepreneurs, we'll do that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wait 5 years for that. Cool. What would you say? So you mentioned a few growth strategies and user acquisition strategies. Working with other like Y Combinators and entrepreneur funds, and then also working with startups. They make a lot of noise. Has there been any other good growth and user acquisition strategies that you say have worked really well? And on the other side, can you share any like experiments that were just like not successful, or you wouldn't recommend to do again, or you wouldn't do again?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, we were a little. I mean, it was somewhat planned, but we were also lucky in the sense that we have like a fairly broad product. Like every entrepreneur needs a bank, and that kind of lends itself a little better to just like kind of fairly broad marketing based noise, if you know what I mean. We don't necessarily 85%, 90% of the time, we're not selling directly to a customer. We're just kind of, as part of the ecosystem, or we're tweeting about it and all this kind of stuff. And that's how people learn about us, and our customers kind of tell them about us. So that's like somewhat lucky. I don't think you can pull it off with like a non-broad product, right? I mean, there are some products that are like 100% of people need, and there's other products that are like less people need. But often with the latter, they're more expensive, and you can target them in like specific ways. So that's one thing. So in terms of things that work for us, it is like one thing that worked for us very successfully was I deliberately in our seed round, we had about 60 investors. And in our Series A, we had another 40 investors. So in both cases, we had like a lead investor and Andreessen Horowitz and CRV that did like the bulk of the round. But we had a lot of people in the ecosystem that like well-known kind of Silicon Valley investors, angel investors, fintech investors, all of that stuff. So whenever when we launched, they helped kind of really like propel that message, and they've been really supportive throughout, and that's been part of our distribution strategy. From not just distribution, but also like a way of us building trust in the ecosystem in the community. In terms of things that haven't worked, I mean, one thing that I thought would work, and maybe it will work in the future, but hasn't worked very well so far, is like, going through like lawyers, and mostly lawyers, but also like to some extent accountants for distribution. Because lawyers, especially with more established companies like law firms more established entrepreneurs, law firms often like incorporate
Exactly.
the company. So it would be like a good place to get referrals. And similarly with accountants, but our experience has been to some extent, like we appeal a lot to entrepreneurs. I want like the best product and all that, but like lawyers and accountants, just a lesser example, lawyers especially, are like very conservative. They don't necessarily want to like, they're much more of like a whole, like if IBM is doing it, then it's like you can't go wrong with IBM kind of mentality. So that's been one strategy that hasn't worked so far. I mean, I haven't given up on 100%, but
I would think that would work really well, right? Yeah. I mean,
it's just like, who do you appeal to? Like, we really do appeal to like entrepreneur that's like, that really feels the pain of like logging into a bank and like not wanting to do it and like having a bit of risk. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about like what channels fit your kind of like type of person.
Interesting. So that's cool. So I mean, first point about like what worked really well, I think, for entrepreneurs listening, I think that the point there, the key there, takeaway is like, pick your investors well. You did that strategically because they're going to make a lot of noise. They're already well connected and they're going to spread the word with, just by selecting them. And then, what didn't work, that's kind of curious. I wonder if, focusing on, lawyers and accountants who only work with startups, I guess that would probably be a better one because they're already used to that kind of way.
Even then they're like conservative.
Really?
And we have, but it might change, like as in like, as we get bigger, like we, hopefully eventually we become the default, in which case like we're the ones being pushed by these people. I give you like one trick that I think has worked well for us. And I've noticed other entrepreneurs don't always do it, is like, the last bit of the round, like when you're raising like a seed round or series A, whatever it is, the last bit of the round is by far the easiest. So once you have a lead investor, you have a lot of momentum, you have like 10, 20% of the round left. And then often what happens is like entrepreneurs don't leave enough space there. Like they'll just fill that up with like the lead investor or like whoever they're talking to. I think it's really useful to like be very strategic with that last bit and then go get difficult angel investors and difficult entrepreneurs, or like whoever is like your dream person, like try to get them in that last bit, because then you have a lot of leverage. Like if you can go to someone and say, for us in the seed round, we were like, hey, Andreessen Horowitz is already doing the seed round. Do you want to back this company? It's just much easier for them to say yes versus like, I'm an unknown entrepreneur doing this thing. So I would say like that's like kind of, if you do want to get like, some larger set of investors, I always recommend other entrepreneurs as investors. I think it's like it's nice to give some space at the end and like not just fill it up with like whoever comes along.
Whoever gives you the check. Yeah, that's smart. I like it. So you mentioned, when the experience you're trying to bring to users is, make it simple. I log in, one click, it gives me a solution. Are there any kind of other innovations that are being leveraged to optimize the, existing procedures and processes for, making the, whether it's currently to make things more efficient, or you see kind of it moving towards with Mercury?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we put a lot of time into, like I would say an insane amount of time into, is the onboarding experience. But we basically had a year and a half to build Mercury, and partly because we were doing the bank stuff, and partly because we were probably a little perfectionist about it. And we spent a lot of time on that onboarding experience. And that's kind of makes, it's a bank. So like we do have to collect a bunch of data. It's not just like, here's an email, here's a password, you're done kind of thing. So, we've turned something that might have been like a major friction point into like a actual like magic point where like people are like, oh, wow, that was like really easy to understand and smooth. I can't believe compared to your example of like flying into Denver to like walk into a branch and like do a bank account versus like online, like, you have a magic experience and you do it in kind of 10 minutes. So that actually is like, it's weird. Like at the time when we were doing it, we didn't think this was like going to be that important, but it has made like this kind of very top of funnel magic moment for people, where people are like, okay, we've now set an expectation for like a very high bar for the rest of the product. And that's been much more successful than I thought it would be. But yeah, we try to make like a lot of other things just easier and better. So, like if you want to get an account number, you don't have to, previous to Mercury, I'd have to like dig through my emails to find my account number and all this stuff. Like we make it like very kind of front and center, and like make it so you just click on it, it just copies it. So all of these things are like obvious in hindsight, but banks are just not really innovating into own products. Like you can make a lot of like these kind of incremental things that like add up to being a much nicer experience.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think I first heard of you guys, I think just over a year ago. It was in this Facebook community group of entrepreneurs I'm in, and somebody posted about it. And when I logged in, I was like, I had to do a double check. I'm like, wait, this is actually going to save me, like next time I'm like more excited to open a US bank account. So can't wait to try you guys out. So talking about kind of the innovation, you guys also created this new product. I think it's called Mercury Raise, where you help seed, help investors or startups get in front of some of the top investors for their seed round. Are you guys kind of leveraging, because you have the data of their business account, you're able to kind of make that connection easier and makes it easier for investors to make that decision, or what's the idea there?
No, I don't think we're not currently like kind of leveraging your data to figure out like, oh, you should get funding or something like that. It's much more kind of opt-in from the user's perspective. I'm a big fan of like, once you launch and like you have users to like listen to your users and figure out like what's their pain points and like solve them. And one of the biggest ones, we get companies like really early on, like, a significant percentage of our companies are like right after incorporation, they sign up to Mercury. Obviously we're targeting kind of startups and people have aspirations to raise money. So a lot of the time people ask us, I talk to my customers often. So they often ask me, hey, you know a lot of entrepreneurs, like, can you help me raise the seed round? So this was like a major request, and instead of like, every now and then I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll introduce you to one or two people. I wanted to like try to systematize it. And yeah, we've had this like great reception. We ran this in kind of batches. So first batch we ran last month, or I guess maybe a month and a half ago. We had about 460 companies, apply. It's not complicated. Like they basically like give a deck and like, give some basic kind of metrics and things like that. And then we send it out to about 170 investors. And these are basically all the investors I knew, but also when we announced this round, we had a lot more interest than I would have thought. Like we had a lot of like really strong kind of VCs and angel investors like NFX and First Round Capital, and all these people kind of say, hey, I want to be part of this, which is really cool to see. So we're still trying to enhance it over time. We ended up I think we made about 300 connections between investors and entrepreneurs in the last batch, which is cool. So yeah, it's from my perspective, if we can help entrepreneurs succeed, we succeed. So that's kind of cool. That's what it's about.
So the 460 you said that applied, connected to 170 investors in that pool. Do you know how many got funding? Or you guys don't track that?
We try to track it, but people aren't always as responsive as we'd like. I believe like we ended up doing more than 20 kind of actual funding events from it. but yeah, we're trying to like compile stats about it. We're actually thinking maybe we could make the funding as part of the product or something, because like it's,
Yeah.
people don't always tell us.
Yeah, I wonder, so do you have like I don't know if you want to mention this or not, we can cut it out, but do you have like a monetization strategy behind that? Or was it just more like as a helping these startups find funding? Or do you have some kind of agreement with all these startups as like your deal flow? And if you get anything, they kind of referral fee over affiliate?
No, I'm happy to talk about it. We're all about transparency. This product we're doing not for any money at all. And I don't think we'd ever monetize it. I think being a middleman in the fundraising process, I think that's like, it doesn't sit well with me. I think it takes advantage of people. My thoughts on it really are like, we make money as a bank account, but from people using the debit card and also people just storing deposits with us. Like that's our monetization. And especially things that don't cost us money, like doing Raise, which is like, it takes work to like connect that network together and all that. And there is a cost associated to that, but it's not like a variable cost, it's a fixed cost. So, building like better software for people, or like making these kind of community-based improvements, we'll do a ton of that stuff for free. And, if it gets us more users, more retention, or just happier kind of entrepreneurs, like I'm happy to do that all day long.
I guess that's pretty smart from your end too, right? I mean, they get investors, they get, they raise capital. Now they're putting that capital in your bank account. So you'll make it on the back end, right? So it's I just
well, actually, one of the inspirations, and I don't want to speak ill of our competitors, but, there is a certain incumbent in this space that always like makes noise about how they help startups get funding, and as far as we can tell, they don't really do anything. So we wanted to turn their like kind of noise about how they're useful and actually like make a product that's actually useful to people.
Smart, yeah, I like it. Cool. So I want to get more into kind of like the personal questions, just kind of rapid fire, but you can answer however you like. Looking back now, I don't know what the right age is. I'm not sure what your age is right now, but what's one advice you wish you had known and you would tell your, let's call it 25-year-old self, 30-year-old self, around that range, when you first kind of, early stage entrepreneur?
Sure. I'm 36.
Okay.
So let's see, like 10 years ago, what advice I would say. It's tricky because like you just don't know what path you took, like whether you could have done it differently and all that kind of stuff. I would definitely say, when we did a pivot, like we were always, and we did, back then, as I kind of somewhat described, we did quite a few pivots in our company. We were always constrained by the box of what we were doing. So we were only like, oh, this is kind of working, but like not really working. Let's like pivot like one piece of that box, which kind of makes sense, right? Like you're like, oh, I have all this code base written. I don't want to do something completely new. I'm going to do like a little piece of that. But I think the right way to have approached it even then would have been to go, okay, this is not working. Let's like go, let's just forget what we know and just go back to the drawing board and come up with like something completely new. If we had done that, I think we could have made something much bigger. In the end, we were successful, but we were always like, we did basically 4 pivots in that company. Wow. And that was a long time. Like it took 8 years or whatever, 7 years. But it was always within that box. And I often tell entrepreneurs this. I'm like, hey, if you're going to do a pivot, just start from zero, come up with the biggest thing that you're most passionate about and do that. Like, don't be constrained by like, oh, the thing I'm doing right now, that's not working.
So you say it was like, rather than doing like marginal iterations, like don't be afraid to, completely.
Yeah, just just delete everything you got, go back to the whiteboard and like start again. Like even
it's
come
hard
up with
though,
a new name. Yeah, it's hard, but like that's almost always the right thing. I mean, if it really is like, okay, it's like there's a baseline, it's working and it's like a feature improvement. I mean, that's one thing. But if you're really pivoting, like, we really did throw away pretty much everything we had 3-4 times. So there's no point in like doing a little bit. Like you might as well go crazy and like just jump out. I mean, look at the best pivot ever, right? This like Slack went from freaking like multiplayer game to a chat collaboration company. That's those two have nothing to do with it. If you look at like the most successful pivots, they tend to be like not like a marginal thing. They're like a completely different space, and that works.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that story with Slack where they exactly just shut it down, right? And I think they were like planning to give back the money to investors, and they just had a little bit left, and they just somehow, that last amount they had left, they're able to make Slack work, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and like Stuart Butterfield has done that twice. He did that with Flickr as well. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's got a really funny email from Mark Andreessen where he's like, if he does it again, then it'll be great. And he did.
Yeah. He did it again. That's funny. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So just quick question on that. So from that first company you launched to the fourth one, was that, you scrapped it every single time, or would you say that first product to the fourth one was like a completely different product?
Yeah, they were all like vaguely related, but yeah, they
Okay.
progressed quite a bit. Like it was like flash games, mobile game, social network, ad network, mobile mediation. They're all like you could map the story out, but they were
Okay.
very different.
Cool. Thanks for that. Cool. So what are some challenges you guys are currently facing in order to continue to grow and scale Mercury right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's an internal challenge, especially with the pandemic. Like we've basically grew from, I guess, 20-ish people at the start of the year. Now we have 65 people. So just doing that, yeah, we tend to be like fairly anti-bureaucracy, and yeah, we don't want to have meetings about everything and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, how do we like scale the company and still be efficient and innovative and like have everyone, feel like they're being having the biggest impact they can have, kind of thing. So that's kind of something that I think about quite a bit, mostly an internal thing. And I think it's made harder just because, yeah, even if we're a fairly distributed team, but at least we'd normally get together every now and then and like see each other and like build like these kind of interpersonal bonds.
Sure.
So I think that's probably like the biggest thing I think about. Let's see, what other stuff? I mean, there's, especially as we grow, there's obviously like, there's a lot of maintenance involved, especially where Mercury meets like the legacy banking infrastructure, which there's a reason banks suck. And part of the reason is like the legacy stuff is kind of bad.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a continuous battle to both scale and, keep it stable and like, and improve that base stuff, but also like continuously innovate. And I'm really happy we got this kind of big product out, Mercury Treasury, this week, because we've been working on that for like freaking 12 months. So that was a big deal. So yeah, I'm a big fan of just continuously like improving and innovating. So that's something we want to keep doing.
Nice. It must feel good finally just getting that out, and after all that hard work, right?
Yeah, seriously. It took a lot longer than like initially anticipated, but
as normal. Yeah, cool. Who are, you've obviously had some success over the last few years. Who or what have been, can you pinpoint any 3 resources, whether that's books, people's mentors, or people you follow, you could say have been, instrumental to your success?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I spent a lot of time towards, especially at the start of my entrepreneurship, just like, I think it's important. It's getting like very specific feedback is often not useful in my opinion, but like learning to think in the same way that like successful people do is. So I did a lot of, and I still do, but read all the autobiographies I could find of like Shoe Dog and Steve Jobs and all that kind of stuff. Listen to as many podcasts as I can. Read every one of Paul Graham's essays. Obviously going through YC was like very important as well to get in the right mindset of entrepreneurship. So I do find that sometimes people don't do that kind of thing. Like they want to be successful, but they haven't like necessarily like done the homework as it was. And I do think it's valuable. I mean, I wouldn't like go and do a bunch of networking events or conferences and all of that. I don't think like that's that valuable, but like having like learning to think in the right mindset. Eventually, you've hopefully like absorb that and you don't have to keep doing it for years and years. But I remember that was like something I really focused on for the first few years, and I think it was like helpful in like forming my kind of having like good instinct. Like you want to get to a position where like you can make decisions quickly and like but the only way you get there is by like building up like a good kind of instinct of like what is things that have worked for other people that haven't worked for other people, and being able to like build on that.
I mean, isn't that essentially what it is? Just like how your decision making is, iteratively better than other people's how they make decisions, and over time that compounds, right? If you do it right.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the other thing that was quite useful is just moving to San Francisco. Maybe now Silicon Valley is in the cloud or something like that. But just surrounding yourself with like other entrepreneurs or other people doing the same thing that you're doing, hopefully slightly ahead of you and stuff. Like you can learn a lot from like just kind of the serendipity of surrounding yourself with good people.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously you've had success with your exit at that point. Today, what does success mean to you? Whether that's personally, financially, lifestyle, there's no right answer. How do you define it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think success is like, I did a tweet about this recently, but I don't think success is like the end goal. Like success is the journey, if that makes sense. So, I want to try to have like the biggest impact possible, both with like concentric circles, like with myself and family, with my people that work at Mercury, with all of our customers and all of that kind of stuff. And like, I think having that biggest impact possible is like probably what drives me. So part of that is just like growing Mercury a lot, adding more products so that we help entrepreneurs more. That's kind of how I think about success.
Nice. So it's more of a day-to-day journey, and that's what your success is, as long as your daily kind of routine and habits are, leading towards that. Yeah.
But always like towards growth. Like I don't think, I don't want to be static in that day-to-day either. Like I want to keep like progressing.
For sure. Cool. Immad, what are your future plans for Mercury going into 2021, and where can our audience get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you're working on?
Future plans, just kind of, we're going to continue launching some of these kind of financial services and also just improving Mercury. So there's a ton of like incremental things we can do, and kind of new things we can do. Sorry, that's like a little vague, but it's going to be good. And best place to get in touch with me, I'm on Twitter. It's just Immad, IMMAD. And you can tweet at me, or my DMs are open as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's how we connected as well. So thank you, Immad. Thanks for joining us. We'll put all those links in our show notes for people to check out. And I highly appreciate you jumping on, spending time with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Thank you.
No worries. Cheers. Thank you all for watching this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at Horizon Capital, and myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please comment down below and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.